Jamal Mosley has said it over and over and over again, and this roster is going to live it. The by committee approach is here. I'm a committee of one, and this is Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is July 25th, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2012 season. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to dive into what the by committee approach is and why the Magic are going to work that way this season. The longtime phrase from Jamal Mosley explained and put into action. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. We truly appreciate you making us your first listen of the day, or whenever you listen to us. We truly appreciate that. We love our Orlando Magic dailies as well, part of our 5 days a week crew. We are going to scale back a little bit starting next week. Enjoy our off season just a little bit now that we've hit the dead point of the summer. But we'll still be going at least 3 episodes strong until the beginning of the season, until training camp begins in September. So a lot still to get to this offseason, even if I do take some time for myself. So I'm part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Jamal Mosley has always had this saying, we're going to do things by committee. You could go through any press conference, at least one in every 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there. He will say we're going to do things by committee. Now, you hear by committee a lot in sports. It's typically used with like pitching and closing in baseball, where you don't have one person that does one defined role or one specific role. You have multiple players or multiple people that you trust to do all of them. Now, there are 2 sides to this coin. One, you're matchup dependent. One, you're able to kind of pick. You have a lot of guys that you trust, and you throw them out there for whatever matchup seems to be the best. Or it's a sign of, like, if you say you have 2 quarterbacks, you really have none. You don't have someone that can step up and fill that defined role or whatever that role is. And so you're kind of trying to figure out who works in that situation. It is both sides of this coin, by the way. Sometimes the by committee approach works because you really do have all of those players and all of those people who are able to fill the role. And it really is just about picking the best one every night. And obviously baseball is different. It's a much more one-on-one sport than basketball, where things are interlocking and you give and take, and it's a lot more complex. Sorry, baseball, it is. But it also could mean that, oh no, we don't have one guy that can fill this role. The by committee approach is very much at the forefront of what the Magic are trying to do. As an organization, as a roster building mechanic, the Magic are by committee because they want everyone to be able to do everything. They look for players who do things that are not typical for their size, for their stature. They want guards who can rebound. They want bigs who can drive the floor, can shoot threes. They want all of these things. It is not a coincidence that they have built their roster around Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, essentially 2 6'10" point guards. They want that. They believe that is a benefit to them. They believe that gives them matchup advantages. And guess what? It does, because there are not many players who are tall enough to keep up with them off the dribble, or strong enough to keep up with them if they're too small. This by committee approach, though, has its drawbacks, and it's obviously been seen most at the point guard position. Now, among the NBA and the modern NBA, point guard is probably the most specialized position. It is game manager. It is someone who's you kind of like mapping and meeting out where players are going to be and what they're going to do. It is a very, very, very important decision just for organization, just being an arm of the coach to some extent. And so the Magic going into this season without a quote-unquote true point guard is still a little bit of a concern. It is still the big mystery of this team. Now, the Magic don't want a pound the ball into the dirt kind of point guard. They have Paolo Banchero. They have Franz Wagner. They want them on the ball a lot. They added a Desmond Bane, who averaged 5 assists per game in the last 2 seasons, to add to their playmaking and creation, to add another player who could seemingly do it all, be a spot-up shooter and an aggressive attacker. They'll get Jalen Suggs back, who could do all those things too. And so, as I've joked with people, the Magic are trying to moneyball their point guard position. Now, I've used this phrase a couple times, and I want to make sure I explain the reference here, because apparently sometimes my movie references go over people's heads. I still have my post-it note. What I mean by Moneyball is there's a scene in the movie Moneyball, which is a great movie. Definitely go see it. Fun sports movie. It grows on you the more you watch it. In Moneyball, the Oakland Athletics are trying to redefine how they build a team. They don't have a big budget, and so they're trying to find value where they can find it. And Brad Pitt essentially explains, we are card counters at the blackjack table. We are trying to game the system. The Athletics were about to lose Jason Giambi and a couple other big free agents to teams that could pay them a lot more. They're going to be able to pay them more than the Athletics could afford. And so he sits there and says, we can't replace Jason Giambi with one player. It's impossible. He's too good. But what we can do is replace him and his production and his statistical production specifically. This is the Moneyball aspect. It's very statistical. We can replace his statistics in the aggregate with multiple players. And so the joke I've been making is the Magic don't have a point guard, but they can recreate one in the aggregate. They can get the production from a point guard through multiple players. So Paolo Banchero last year averaged around 5 assists per game. Franz Wagner last year averaged around 4 assists per game. Desmond Bane averaged 5 assists per game last year. That alone is 14 assists per game. Now, you look at the Magic last year, they were last in the league in assists per game at 23 per game. A lot of that, of course, dependent on shooting. A lot of that, of course, dependent on a lot of other factors. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that stat. Last season during the regular season, according to Second Spectrum, the Magic averaged 44.9 potential assists per game. That's still near the bottom of the league. So they weren't last. The Clippers were last in potential assists. A lot of one-on-one play there. The Magic were a team that were low on assists because they didn't make a lot of shots. But they're a low passing team anyway. They have a Paolo Banchero who holds the ball a lot. They have a Franz Wagner who holds the ball a lot. So I'm not expecting the Magic to go in here and revolutionize their offense, and suddenly it's this motion-based and a lot of moving and passing and all that stuff. Jamal Mosley said this a few years ago, too, when talking about Luka Doncic. You play at the pace your star wants you to play at. Paolo Banchero, as much as I think the Magic do need to speed things up and play faster, Paolo Banchero is going to play the way Paolo Banchero plays. And everybody else has got to get comfortable with that. And, look, maybe that is the problem. Maybe there needs to be a push to say, like, Paolo, you got to go faster. Maybe I don't think that's necessarily a problem right now, though. But certainly I don't expect this team to, like, suddenly be the fastest team in the league or play with the most possessions in the league. Getting Jalen Suggs back is going to help speed this team up. He likes to push the tempo and push the pace off of misses in a way that the Magic didn't have last year. He's going to help in that regard. Just like all these other players who have this playmaking ability are going to be able to step in and help too. This is the by committee approach. The idea is the Magic now have more playmakers, more guys who can create, and hopefully more guys that can get the ball moving and create easy opportunities for each other. That's what a point guard does. At least statistically, that is what a point guard does. And so the Magic are looking at their roster and saying, in our starting lineup at the very least, we have 5 guys we feel very comfortable can do just about anything. That is the ideal. That is the idea behind what the Magic are trying to accomplish here. And so they believe they can make up for whatever shortcomings might come from not having a quote-unquote point guard. I think that this is going to be an interesting experiment. And frankly, we've talked a lot this week about where things might go wrong or the hiccups that the Magic have to overcome. To me, this is the central argument of the season. Because look, the Magic have invested a lot of money. They have three $30 million contracts this season. Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane, Franz Wagner. Paolo Banchero's on the last year of his rookie deal. He's about to jump up into the 40s. They have a lot of questions. And no question is bigger than whether this group, as constructed, and I know we've talked a lot about the centers this week. We're going to get to the centers again at the end of the episode. The question is whether this group, as constructed, can push this team forward. And that's why Tyus Jones is so important. So I want to chat a little bit about why Tyus Jones's insurance is probably as big as anything else. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to the game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you've got to be in the stands. You don't want to, you've got to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you could splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to enjoy the game with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to the start of your game, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. If you're, look, we are in Orlando right now. We've got some soccer, we got some concerts, but it's football season. It's baseball season. If you're traveling out to Jacksonville, to Tampa, to watch the football or baseball games, and you don't know these stadiums, you don't know George Steinbrenner Field, you don't know Raymond James Stadium, you don't know Everbank Field or whatever they're calling it these days. You don't know these stadiums. With Game Time, they give you zone deals to pick the best seats for you in the section you're looking to sit in. And they've got digital panoramic views of the stadium, of where your seats are, so you know exactly what the view is and exactly what you're paying for. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So the point guard question is a real one. Because look, last year, the Magic really struggled for much of the season. And look, injuries were a big part of it. Not having Paolo and Franz, not having Jalen Suggs for long periods of time. A lot of the struggles for the Magic last year could be chalked up to injury. And very, very realistically so. So I'm not sitting here saying that we should ignore what happened last season. Do not ignore what happened last season. Last season happened. It was real. It was a thing. But if there is a little bit of skepticism, if there's a little bit of a thought like maybe the Magic didn't make the right move, and look, I think Desmond Bane is going to really elevate this team, it's because the Magic found their most success last season when Corey Joseph stepped into the lineup. Now, Corey Joseph is not a game-changing player. Corey Joseph is not someone who should greatly change this team. It was about a year ago. I don't remember when the Magic exactly signed Corey Joseph, but whenever the Magic signed Corey Joseph last year, I am 100% sure I sat in this chair, spoke into this microphone, looked at this computer screen, and said, if Corey Joseph plays major minutes next year, something has gone terribly wrong. Thank God the Magic had Corey Joseph, because putting him into the starting lineup for those last 15 games or whatever it was, putting him into the starting lineup for that last month of the season likely saved the Magic season. It helped them get to 500. It helped them win the Southeast Division. It helped them win the 7 seed. And while certainly Corey Joseph was not a playoff player, he was the guy that teams attacked and that reason why the Magic had to play Anthony Black a little bit more, and the Magic lost something because of that. Corey Joseph's ability to stabilize the team as a game manager, as a point guard, just as someone who knows how to run a team, was vital. And so it's fair, honestly, it's fair to be skeptical about whether the Magic's approach at point guard is going to work this season. It's an experiment. A lot of things right on it. And look, the Magic, I think, are still going to be successful and win a lot of games and get a good seed in the playoffs because they're a really good team. Like, let's dispel this, because people are accusing me of being negative, and I'm being intentionally negative here, and potentially like kind of putting some pinholes in the balloon and seeing how much air gets out. Let me be very, very real about this. The Magic as constructed, that's baseline, like, oh, they're about what we expected. They are a nearly 50-win team. They are the 3 or the 4 seed in the East. This team is too much talent, too much raw talent not to be successful in the regular season. What we're talking about are the little things that A, get you through an injury bug in January, but B, get you deeper into the playoffs. All of these conversations that I'm having right now and these questions that I'm raising about the team are not questions for the regular season. The Magic are going to be very good. These are questions for the playoffs. These are questions that say, this is how the Magic get out of the first round. This is how the Magic compete with Cleveland, compete with New York, compete with whoever they're facing in the second round and get to the conference finals. These are the little questions that determine whether you win a championship, and how you answer them determines whether you win a championship. That's what we're talking about here. And so, looking at last year, it really did feel like having a true point guard mattered. Mattered in this metaphysical doesn't sound like the right word, but in this like intangible way. Just having someone who knows how to direct and manage a team matters. And so Tyus Jones is an insurance policy. He may not be the greatest defender, and he's a clear upgrade over Corey Joseph. Do not get me wrong. He's a clear upgrade over Corey Joseph. But he's an insurance policy to give this team the kind of stability they had when Corey Joseph was playing, when Corey Joseph was the starting point guard. The Magic starting lineup is set. Like, Tyus is not starting, and if Tyus starts, the Magic have to move on from whoever they bench. Like, they can't pay that much money to someone that's not going to start. Not with their cap situation. And the Magic do have early bird rights on Tyus Jones next summer. They would have to pay him a little bit more and all that stuff. And if he has a really good season, they won't be able to pay him as much. I believe the early bird is 110% is the max you can pay. And obviously Orlando can't pay more than that. And retain him because they'll be over the tax next year. They'll be over the first apron next year. They'll be over the second apron next year. Again, you can always resign your own free agents. That's always the rule. Tyus Jones' insurance this season to say, if this point guardless thing doesn't work out, we have a solid option. And if you look at Tyus Jones, it's not just about the assist to turnover ratio that's really, really good. He had a 69% assist rate with the Suns last year. Suns as a team had a 67.3% assist rate. So 67.3% of their shots were assisted. The Tyus Jones was on the floor was up to 69. That was the best among rotation players. Mason Plumlee played 74 games. He, on the floor a lot with Tyus Jones. So it's essentially the best with him. The Magic's assist rate last year, just for record, was 60.3%. Among rotation players, Caleb Houston was at 61.8%. So again, this is another area where the Magic have added someone who does something or influences the game in a way that the Magic don't have already. So we've talked about like the catch and shoot, how the Magic didn't have any 40% catch and shoot three-point shooters last year. They added 2 in Tyus Jones and Desmond Bane, and then they'll get Jalen Suggs back, who should be above that number as well. Tyus Jones is someone who influences passing, who makes the simple passes really, really, really expertly. That's my big analysis. I have a video on him up on my Patreon page. He makes the simple passes really good, really well. And so Jones is insurance. And the Magic are hoping that he can set the table and be that calming influence, that point guard influence, that game managing influence that was so successful late in last season. So when they need it, if things are chaotic, they can throw him in there, calm everyone down, get them to the right spots, get them the right shots, maybe even in some late game situations, be perfectly honest. I don't think that'll happen, but it might if they're struggling. He's someone that will calm the team down. And that's why he could be really, really valuable, and why even in this by committee approach the Magic have, Tyus Jones still matters a lot. The other place where the Magic are going a little bit by committee is with the center position. I want to reset that a little bit. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the week, but I want to reset that to kind of continue this theme. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. So it's not just the point guard position where the Magic are kind of doing this by committee thing. Whereas a guard, you can kind of swap any player into that spot. It's a little bit tougher to do it at the center position because obviously you still need some size. And we talked about this earlier in the week, how the Magic center group is really interesting because as a trio, they seem to do everything the Magic could need. They need some rim protection and defensive energy. Goga Bitadze's in there. They need a solid defender to be versatile and spread the floor a little bit. Theoretically, that's Wendell Carter. They need a low post threat, and they just need a burst of energy and offense. That's Mo Wagner. The Magic can really mix and match their center lineup and center rotation to meet whatever they're facing. They get into a playoff series, and Mo Wagner is struggling with a tough, gruff center. Goga Bitadze is very, very comfortable stepping in. It is a luxury. It is probably a luxury the Magic won't be able to afford next year, to have these three centers and be able to plug and play them the way they want. And then on top of that, they can go small with Jonathan Isaac. People want to play Paolo Banchero in small ball center lineups as well. But you can go small with Jonathan Isaac, who can be a rim protector and shot blocker. And again, theoretically, he didn't last year, spread the floor as a potential shooter. The versatility is part of the point of this whole by committee approach, in that the Magic can do anything they want with any of these players. Now, obviously, I think a big thing with this is a lot of people focus on the stats. What is a center supposed to do? Center is supposed to protect the rim, block shots, and rebound. And the Magic don't have a dominant shot blocker. They don't have a dominant rebounder. That's the truth. That's the truth of it. But the reality is the Magic have both, because the Magic do the entire center responsibility by committee. Everybody contributes to the rebounding. Because the Magic switch so much, they need everyone to attack the glass. That's probably why the Magic are not as good getting out in transition as they should be. And I would expect, the one area where I do expect the Magic to improve next season is in transition. Getting Jalen Suggs back helps. Getting Desmond Bane as a trailer and three-point shooter helps. The Magic are going to have to find a way to get out and run a little bit more. And part of the problem is that their guards are rebounding and their centers are on the perimeter guarding a lot. But again, for all this talk about the Magic's poor rebounding, they still finished sixth in defensive rebound rate. They were still one of the best rebounding teams in the league last year. And yeah, everyone has some bad games, and maybe some bad games or some bad rebounding moments stand out. But the Magic were a solid rebounding team. It is essential to what they do that they limit teams to one shot. They gave up the fewest, I think, second chance points in the league last year as well. And again, the Magic are also really good at stopping fast breaks. That's another key to their defense. For all the talk then as well about the team's struggles to block shots, the Magic led the league last year in blocks per game. Wendell Carter, for all the talk that he can't protect the rim, gave up 57.2% shooting at the rim, according to Second Spectrum. That trailed only Jonathan Isaac, who's at 50, which was a bad year for him. Jonathan Isaac, I feel like this always needs to be said when we talk about Jonathan Isaac. Jonathan Isaac's struggles last year were, yes, his offense stunk. But his struggles last year were that he went from an elite defender to a very good defender. That's it's crazy the bar we set for Jonathan Isaac's defense. And look, J.I. would agree he wasn't as mobile and bouncy as he needed to be defensively. Hopefully he's worked on that this summer. But Wendell Carter giving up a 57.2% shooting at the rim was better than Goga Bitadze, was better than last year. He was 58.2% in 2024, so he improved by a percentage point. The Magic don't block shots in the traditional way. And as I mentioned in the episode 8 about the centers earlier this week, when we get to the playoffs, it may come down to the Magic need to get a crazy block or have this big play And that's not Wendell Carter's game. Wendell Carter's game is consistency. He's going to be in the right spot. He's going to prevent you from getting to your spot, and he's going to contest and challenge and rebound. That's what he did in the playoffs, and that's why he was so effective in the postseason. Despite the other things that happened in the playoffs, but he's not going to come in and fly in and make that big block that could save a game. And that again, I feel like it's been so long since the Magic have been in these deep playoff games. These games turn on like one play, like two plays over the course of a 48-minute game. I mentioned this so many times to people during the series with Cleveland in 2024. Like, we could sense that was going to be a tight series. But like, we got back to Orlando for game 3, and I was like talking to Magic staffers, like, what was it like in Cleveland, and how do you think the series is going to go? And I was like, there's going to be a close game, and that close game is going to determine who wins this series. And I don't think it's going to be tonight. I didn't think it was going to be game 3. I was like, game 3, the Magic are probably going to win, and it's going to be it's going to be like a rousing, you come home. That's how these series go. Game 4 of that series, I was like, game 4 is probably going to be the close series. And look, game 4 wasn't. I was wrong about that. But that series, that game turned on like that near fight between Jalen Suggs and Darius Garland, and just them getting face to face, and Jalen Suggs laughing at him. Game 5 was that game. The Magic win game 5. If Franz Wagner doesn't have that shot blocked by Evan Mobley, Orlando wins that series in 6 games. Even game 6 was a close game. Like, game 6, the Magic had to fight and claw to win that game. And even game 7, I can point to the 2 or 3 plays in that game that turned things. It was Sam Merrill hitting that 3 right before halftime to make it a 10-point game. When he made that 3 right before halftime, or he made those couple threes before halftime, I was like, uh-oh. Like, this is a game now. Like, they didn't put this thing away. This is trouble. Even the Boston series, like, that Boston series turned on 2 plays. The end of game 4, like, game 3, the Magic won a close game. Franz Wagner made 2 incredible plays at the end to win that game. Magic got their win. Game 4 came down to Jason Tatum making those tough shots he made in the fourth quarter that ended that game, that won that game. And then game 5 turned on Paolo Banchero's fouls. The Magic were playing really well in game 5. The Magic were going to win game 5 until the foul trouble, I think. And then Mosley was kind of out of options. And the Magic had lost the lead by the time they took Franz Wagner out, but then they took Franz Wagner out at the third quarter, tried to play the last 2 minutes of that third quarter without either of their stars, and Boston turned a 10-point lead into an 18-point lead, and we all knew it was over. It was done. These games, these playoff games, these high-level, high-stakes games turn on the tiniest things. The smallest decisions have these huge ripple effects. And that's been the big point. And again, this is a great way to wrap up the week. That's been the point I want to make about all of this. These seemingly tiny things are going to matter in May, are going to matter next May. And that is what we need to start thinking about now. That is what's on the table, what's on the line for the Magic right now. The Magic are going to experiment a lot. They have a lot of things to sort through. They have a lot of things to figure out. They're going to be trying to they're going to be trying to do a lot of things. How the Magic evolve, how the Magic solve these problems or answer these questions is going to be the whole season. It is. And they're covered. I think they've got answers to a lot of these questions. Whether they're high-level answers, whether they're good enough answers are going to be the question. But the Magic are experimenting a lot at various positions. And they got to figure out this roster. Like, every season is a new season. You got to figure the team out again. They got to figure this roster out and figure out the way to maximize this roster. But there are a lot of questions to answer on the way there. The Magic are going to do this by committee approach. Everybody's going to be responsible for everything. And whether that works or not is frankly going to define this season. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You could, of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun ways you download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can find us as well on YouTube. Just search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub. I do have a video there breaking down Tyus Jones's passing ability. It's pinned to the top of the page. Do not need to go searching for it. You can find that at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day, go make Locked On NBA your next listen because there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. We will be back next week. Like I said, we're starting our off-season schedule next week. We're going to scale. We may scale back. It may not be 5 days a week starting next week. But I do have a fun group of episodes planned beginning Monday. I chatted with Jason Beatty for some summer vibes. So we'll talk with Jason Beatty, the Orlando Sentinel, on Monday's episode of Locked On Magic. So stay subscribed. Stay locked in. We're going to cover Eurobasket hard when we get there at the end of August. So don't worry. There's still plenty more to come here this summer before we get to the start of training camp here in 2 months. We're 2 months away from the start of training camp. Or it's going to be a long 2 months, but it's going to go fast. And then the fun of the season is going to be here. But have a great weekend. We will see you all again Monday, probably Sunday evening, but we'll see you all again Monday for another episode of Locked On Magic.